There's winners and there's losers, and there was a massive fantasy draft that we all took a part in. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast, the Sports Ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Bruski. And we have a special guest today, Noah Rubin of Roto World, and my cohorts. We do have a Dr. A in the house. He's on the IR right now, injured list. He's just subbing in every once in a while. He'll grace us with his presence. And today we're going to have a show. We're going to do a little bit of everything on this show. We're going to look at some winners and losers in fantasy leagues, kind of, I guess, right now, since we're 2 weeks away from the start of the season. And we're going to talk about this massive mock draft that we just had. Noah Rubin participated in that. Doc A participated in that. A couple Sports Ethos guys and a bunch of industry studs all participated in it. I thought it was a great draft. So we got no shortage of things to talk about here on today's show. But before we do it, let's pay the bills. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one spot for all things football. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prize and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of our over 150 slots. Head to the website today to get on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. There's been so much going on. If I read that line about when the game's over twice, I wouldn't even know. It would have just been a thing that I did. Just like mispronouncing every player name in the book and also people in our draft. Noah, how are you doing, man? It's great to see you. It's been so long since we chopped it up. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I know a lot has changed since we last talked. I've, had a lot of different events that have occurred. I did some work and ate dinner. And so it's great to be back on. Always fun chatting fantasy hoops. Can't complain about that ever.
Yeah, it's funny because I was like, what day is it? And it was like, oh, it's Monday. Oh, yeah. We just spent all afternoon talking with people around the world on a fantasy, in a fantasy draft. Hundreds of people were watching as we did this. Lots of fun. I do want to report, Noah, that we've decided to play the league out. And
Okay.
if you want, Doc, this is where you can step in and make some magic. Do you think you can convince Noah to play this out? I don't even think he's paying attention.
Yeah, see, he's scared. He knows he can't convince me.
Well,
Oh, here he comes.
my internet just died.
We just thought you were staring into the distance, man.
I told the whole group that if everybody's in except for Noah, Noah's going to be in.
Oh, did you hear that?
I think you guys aren't understanding just how well Gen Z was prepared for peer pressure. That's all I heard my entire life growing up was, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean that you have to do it. Learn how to say no. So I'm prepared. If somebody else, I know that you guys had Bruski 2 managers drafting your team. So if one of you guys wanted to take over my team,
we're too attached to our team, man. We're like peas in a pod.
I don't mean to break up the dynamic duo, but it sounds like it would be letting the league down if you guys didn't take over my team.
I love that you're standing on this principle. I think that the DARE program that we grew up with didn't work so well.
Noah figured this out 10 years before you and I did, Brew.
Yeah, he seems to be wise beyond his years.
Yeah, you got to say no sometimes.
Yeah. What is that?
Sometimes.
That's not fun. You just tell me to do something, I'll do it. Let's get to some fantasy hoops here. So we're going to talk a ton about this draft. So I want to kind of put that away because I'm looking at this draft board and it's awesome. Like there's just stuff to talk about all over the place. I mean, the LaMelo Ball thing, I kept going back to that. I was looking at Karl Anthony Towns. I was looking at all of the players on your team, Noah. I thought your team was fascinating. But let's kind of rewind a little bit. And now I know that off-season talk's not exactly on the top of everybody's minds right now, but maybe even as we progress deep into draft season here, who do you feel like's a winner right now in fantasy leagues? Who's somebody that you think's like on the rise that you're just kind of like, yeah, man, that's all breaking pretty well for them?
Let's see. I know we're going to talk about some guys that we're high on a little bit later, but I might double up my answer for this one. Say DeAnthony Melton, guy who's been really, really good in fantasy in limited minutes for a couple of years with Memphis and then 1 year with Philly. And then last year was just decimated by injuries. And I know he started their first preseason game. That I guess we'll see if that continues as they play more games. But if he's starting and he looked good and he's healthy, then yeah, that guy's going to be really, really good in fantasy. And right now you can get him in the later rounds, as I did in round 10 of this mock that we just got done doing. So I'm very excited about DeAnthony Melton this year.
Nice. And how much are you afraid that the back injury is going to kind of just show itself this season? Are you like medium scared, not scared at all? I mean, he just started the other day. I think the word around camp is that he's DeAnthony Melton. In fact, the quote was that they were the Warriors players when they played Memphis. This is great for anybody who's been a fan of DeAnthony Melton, and Lord knows I am. I got the receipts to prove it. Yikes. And so the word out of Warriors camp is like when they were playing Memphis in the playoffs, they were like, why isn't that guy playing more? The Warriors were. And it's like everybody in fantasy knew that Melton was great. Everybody in Memphis knew Melton was great, but just they never gave him that love, and they never gave him the minutes. Now he's bounced around a little bit, Philly injury. What do you like about the fit in Golden State for DeAnthony Melton?
Well, back to talking about his back, I think it's something that like you do have to keep in mind a little bit, because like that is something that could pop back up. But since it's just like a late round pick, like you're not taking him in round 6 or 7, you're taking him in round 10 or later. I think it's, a risk worth taking. If it flares up early on, okay, drop him and pick up Brandon Podziemski, a guy who I was very high on until it looks like now Melton's going to start. And I think we just got to kind of keep an eye on what that lineup looks like throughout the preseason, because if they kind of switch back and forth and don't have a decision until the start of the regular season, then maybe it's Podziemski's that's the guy. So it's a situation that's worth keeping an eye on, but it looks like Melton right now, which I do like the fit when you're asking about that, because he's a guy that is a good defender, can get steals, space the floor a little bit. Like he can do a lot of different things that I think he's going to fit in well with what Golden State's trying to do, which is win games without any other true stars around Steph.
Yeah, and I grew up a long-suffering Warriors fan. Then I got into the media, and then I lost my fandom, and then they did well, and now I'm back, kind of not caring about reporting and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit more of a fan than I used to be. So I'm happy with this team. I think it's like they're the plucky underdog with a lot of connecting players. It's like they all need each other. Everybody's going to kind of fit a little tiny role. It's a little murky right now. Maybe they're one player too much, but it just feels like everybody's got their role. And then Steph could go off this season. I thought the Steph pick in that draft we just did was an interesting one. He's not getting a lot of pub as like a high upside guy, but he got it in the draft. I think he went 8th or 9th. So I'm with you. I'm with you on this. I think it's let me ask you this. Who do you draft, Melton or Podziemski?
I think I would draft Melton as of right now. Now, if they play, I think their next preseason games within the next few days, if they play another game and Podziemski's a starter, then it's just kind of like a toss up. But at this point, it's like I'd probably take Melton in round 10 and then maybe Podziemski like last round. Because I don't know. I think Steve Kerr is not shy about changing up the starting lineup. Like, who knows, that could change 5 games into the year, and then it's Podziemski. And Podziemski was very good last year as a rookie. I expect him to be better in year 2. So I think you can draft both guys. It's got to be in the last few rounds, because it does feel a bit risky.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on with Golden State. Talking with Noah Rubin of Roto World. The fact that they're so hell bent on taking threes, I think, is interesting. Like, they're talking about like Andrew Wiggins, you need to take 7 threes. Podziemski, you took 3 threes last year. Why don't you take 10 this year? Okay, actually watched that second preseason game, and he had Podziemski that is a kind of tough contested 3 coming off a screen that they've literally talked about all off season, that this is the play that he's supposed to rise and fire, even though it's a little bit of a bad shot. He goes into his probing dribble drive and takes the floater that he says he doesn't want to take anymore, misses the thing, and then he grabs his head like, I did it again. And that is going to be the problem, I think, with this strategy, is these guys aren't yet all on board with, if they are indeed going with some kind of a money ball / replace Clay's 3 strategy, I think it's going to be tough, maybe like first third of the season, if it actually even play. Sometimes they talk like this and it just never pans out. They being NBA teams in general during the preseason. But okay, Warriors, Melton, winner. I like that. That was a really nice under the radar, recent kind of a winner there.
I just feel like Melton. This is Doc, by the way.
Hi, Doc.
Hello. I feel like Melton. We go through this every single year. Like, man, the guy's just got a perfect game. It's built for fantasy. He's going to be awesome. And it just never happens. I'm kind of over it, personally.
You're just done with it. Yeah, no, I got as much Melton fatigue as the next person, but I do love Melton. I think he's just a great basketball player. If he didn't get hurt, I think it would probably be a different conversation. The fact that he's flying above the rim in the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors, and the Warriors are like, why isn't that guy playing more? I mean, it just sort of it sums up his career to me in a nutshell. Let's move off of Melton. Let's get to, do you have another winner from this offseason that's just sort of, I like this under the radar winner stuff. I mean, I know one that I could say off the top of my head that might be the biggest winner of the offseason or the preseason, if you will, but I don't even want to say it because I feel like it's too obvious. You got another under the radar winner cooking over there?
I can cook up an under the radar winner. I was gonna give you a not so under the radar one, but I can give you an under the radar one.
What was your over the radar one?
Trae Young. I just try and talk about the Hawks as much as I possibly can because I'm a Hawks fan, and I think Doc knows that. But my under the radar one is going to be kind of similar to the Melton Pajemski duo, where it's like one of them is going to do it and probably be very good, but we'll see which one starts. And it's Christian Brown and Julian Strawther in Denver with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope now in Orlando. One of them is going to start at shooting guard. Christian Brown was got the first starting nod against that Boston that first game, and then the second one they both started because MPJ and Aaron Gordon were out. But I think both guys have some upside. They're not going to be top 50, top 75 guys, but I think they can both be borderline top 100 guys, and they provide different things. So both guys might get a chance. Like Julian Strawther is a much better floor spacer. We've seen him be really, really good in some summer league and preseason games. And I think that if he can get 25 minutes per game, he can be probably not as good defensively as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but a nice floor spacer for them. And then Christian Brown does a lot of the little things and specifically kind of make up for that defense. So maybe the two of them together help make up for what KCP has brought to Denver the last few years and helping them be a contender. And maybe they're able to make it work.
Yeah, we'll see. That's I love watching Denver play. I love Michael Malone. A lot of experience covering him with Sacramento. And I think that the fact that there are reports in Denver that maybe he's not seeing eye to eye with the front office. Yes. I think that's interesting. A lot of interest. I mean, it's just Jokic, I don't know. I saw him in that first game over in Abu Dhabi, and I think he's like a little overweight, very tan, very tan. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's Jokic. But the one year that he really put everybody on notice, like I'm a historically good player, he was in the most amazing shape I've ever seen him in, and he outran every center down the floor. It was just so much fun to watch from a basketball perspective. Let's talk some losers, but before we get into that, I want to see like your path to being an analyst in this industry. What's that been like? I mean, I know we both worked at RotoWorld, me and Doc, and you're still there right now. Like, what's that been like? I mean, I remember my first few articles I posted, like, I mean, just like walking on air, right? Like, what's your path been like, and let people in on kind of how that's been for you.
Yeah. So my sophomore year of college was right before COVID. I started becoming a journalism major in school and got connected with like a local news outlet, very, very small, and was covering some local high school sports. Did that for a couple of years. I guess growing up did like some like broadcast journalism like in school and stuff, but it wasn't something that I was like definitely going to do this, but I enjoyed it. So started covering like local high school sports, football, volleyball, softball, basketball, like all this, baseball, everything. Did that for a couple of years. Wrote for two outlets kind of in the North Georgia area. So that was bringing up kind of the journalism side. And then COVID hit 2020, everybody knows. And about 2 months into that, I, went from living at home to moving up to a house that we were renting for college up in Dahlonega. And like, I know obviously Doc knows, Doc is in Dahlonega, but maybe not everybody realizes that COVID basically didn't exist in Dahlonega. So nobody really recognized that COVID was happening. Everybody went out, no masks, whatever. So that was the only place I could find to play basketball. And it had been a couple months since I had played. So I was kind of going stir crazy. So started doing that, met some people in the community, and including one guy who owns the local glass shop. I think his name's actually Chris Kennedy, I think. But everybody just calls him Glass. So got connected with him, started talking trash back and forth with him, ended up kind of becoming friends, just by talking trash back and forth. And after, I guess, kind of knowing him for like a year, maybe more, he's like, hey, I know you're doing like this journalism thing. I have a friend who writes about fantasy basketball for NBC. Like, do you want me to connect you with him? I'm like, I just got done complaining about covering like high school softball. Like, yeah, I want you to connect me with the guy who's writing about the NBA. Of course. So I've been doing journalism, got connected with Doc, got connected with Ryan, sent in some like blurbs that they were, sent me like a game to practice blurbing, sent it in. And I guess we kind of lost Doc there for a little bit, but sent that into them. They were like, okay, cool. Like, we'll keep you in mind. Can't get you on yet. Maybe when you get closer to graduating college, like just keep reaching out. So I kept doing that like every few months, like, hey, don't forget about me. I still want to work with you guys eventually, whenever that works out. And then that was November of 2021 was when I finally got brought on after doing a little interview. And that was 3-4 weeks before I graduated college. So started then. I guess it's coming up on 3 years since I started with them. Just started doing a couple news shifts per week. And then obviously in October, November 2022, the workload kicked up a little bit when it was just a couple of us left. But it's been a grind since then.
Yeah. Those news shifts, they'll put a hair on your chest. I always say the best analysts are blurbers, because I mean, you're literally doing push-ups every 5 minutes and keeping up with the news wire. I don't know what it's like now. I just remember, if that news wasn't up, I would get 5 friendly messages, not mean. Nobody was mean ever, but I would get 5 friendly messages that the news needed to be up faster. And, but I loved it. I think the competition there of being good at what you're doing, that's what I like about this industry. I like excelling, I like everything that place had going on for it. And, it's produced quite a coaching tree. Doc, you've produced quite a coaching tree.
When they fired all of us and left Noah and like 2 other guys to do all the work,
Eesh.
Rolf and Zach, like, I don't even know how they did it. And I was like, then I talked to them and they're like, well, we're not going to let this thing fail. We're just going to keep doing what we got to do. But they were doing the work of like 8 people with 3 of them. And it's still kind of mind-blowing to me.
There's a lot of stuff in this industry that is going the wrong direction, and it will only get better when we find a way out of certain economic pressures that are definitely making it difficult on everybody involved. But instead of talking about sad things, let's talk about even sadder things. Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia is here after the break. Okay, we're back. That break was something else, wasn't it, guys? There's a lot going on in that break. Holy moly. Okay, so we've got an Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia contest. Noah, this thing is it's intense. Questions are great. Losers got to fly across the country by the winner of beer. I'll see you in Dahlonega, Noah, at Johnny B's. Watch Doc roll people on Golden Tee. And you're on mute, Doc. Your mute button is just mutinying.
Well, it's because I was hacking up lungs during the friggin' draft yesterday when my mute button wasn't working properly. So my apologies to anyone who was affected by that catastrophe.
Thank you. I was going to say a name, but I don't even want to link that to you. All right. Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia. Basically, it's really tough, and the questions are great. Actually, really good. If you like trivia, and I know that, have you been to Doc and Casey's trivia over at Johnny B's? Noah?
I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever made it over there. I was very surprised that you guys did it on Thursday nights when you told me that, because I was like, I know the college students are there like an hour after you guys leave. So
That's intense.
We were the pregame.
there you go.
You just get everybody warmed up.
To the bar, yeah.
Wonder how much advertising Johnny B's has gotten on this show. You better talk with Johnny and ask him for like $50 a show or something. Anyway,
Just get Johnny on the show. That's what we need to do.
I'm good with this. I don't even know Johnny, but it seems like he runs a fair institution there.
I don't know. Is there actually a Johnny that runs it?
I don't know. It used to be Johnny B, and then Johnny B sold it to a lady named Fran. And now everybody thinks that I am Johnny B and that I run Johnny B's.
Doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me at all that you might run Johnny B's. Let's get a trivia question in here, guys. We got who ranks third in steals is the question here, folks. If you're playing along either online or at the I guess pod platform of your choice. That was smooth. Who ranks third in steals for the Hawks all time? Career totals in the regular season, knowing that Mookie Blaylock is number 1 at 1321. The great Dominique Wilkins is number 2 with 1245. And the number 3 person who we're trying to figure out here had 1,166. We got a couple Hawks fans in the room. I should be a big loser here. Noah, you get to go first. Who was third in steals all time? Atlanta Hawks.
I have a couple of guys I'm considering, but I feel like as a young Hawks fan that it's Doc Rivers. And I actually couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many years he played with the Hawks. I know he was with the Hawks for a little bit at least, and hopefully I'm not a casual fan that everybody's going to say, actually, he only played like 4 years. There's no way this was him, but I'm going to lock in Doc Rivers.
This is like, oh my God. You just nailed it on the first try.
Oh, really?
That was also my guess.
That's great. Well, Doc,
I'm just kidding.
Happy. Hey, Doc, I've been running the show while you've been gone. I made up like 3 points while you're gone. Just letting you know. Well, that was interesting. Usually, I mean, no joke. Like that thing goes on for like 10 minutes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
painfully
pop the bubble.
What we're talking about.
I'm glad you're enjoying my hospitalization so much.
No comment, Doc. No comment.
That was a joke. I'm just kidding.
I know you're kidding. I know you're kidding. I love you. It's been tough without you. I will say that. It's been real tough. I'm glad that you're back and doing well, and we're rooting for you to get back even faster. So let's get back to some losers from the off season or the preseason. Who do you think right now is taking a dip, Noah?
I mean, let's see. Pretty easily Mitch Robinson. I mean, that feels like just kind of a layup. Like Karl Anthony Towns is here. You're no longer the starting center. So, I mean, there was already the fact that he was going to be out until December or January, but it was still like, well, it's literally like Jericho Sims and Precious Achua. So when you get back, you're going to be great. But now it's like when you get back, you might be playing like 15 minutes per game. Like, there's no fantasy value there to me. There's no way I would. I mean, I think someone drafted him, so I don't mean to like bash that hard, but like I don't think I'd be drafting Mitch Robinson.
It was an auto pick. They didn't set a queue.
Okay.
Who was that person, and why did they do that?
I feel like it was Poppy.
Oh yeah, well, Poppy, he had to leave, so that makes perfect sense. Oh, auto draft, it strikes again. How many Mitch Robinson draft picks will there be out there because of that? Who else? Any other losers? I feel like, recent trade. I mean, is Dante DiVincenzo a loser? I don't even know if he was a loser.
I feel like he's got more of an opportunity in Minnesota than he was probably going to have in New York.
Yeah.
What about CJ McCollum?
That's a good one, I think.
Oh yeah, CJ McCollum, and it's interesting because they become such losers that it almost provides the basis to draft them because they start falling so far in drafts.
They become value picks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like what did you think about the Chris Middleton stuff that was going on in the last draft? Like, would you, Noah, take Chris Middleton at like 120 where he went?
I'm trying to remember what the exact injury news was for him, but I think
he
I
wasn't-
would be.
He's like playing he's not yet playing 5-on-5, just it felt like a very nothing report to me.
Yeah, I think I'd still take him just because he's like really good. But obviously the injury stuff is very concerning and has been for a few years. So I think taking him, it looks like kind of the end of round 11 here was when Dan Titus took him. I can't get mad at anybody for drafting anybody in the last 3 rounds. Like, just kind of make your dart throw, and if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, you're probably going to drop him anyway. So yeah, I mean, you draft Chris Middleton, you throw him on your IL immediately and pick up that next dart throw that you were going to make. So I think I'm fine with him that late. I don't know if I'd go much earlier.
Yeah, I'm going to bring the board up. What you got, Doc?
If Middleton ends up on any of my teams, you can assume the worst because I didn't make that pick.
I will not be assuming the worst, and also I will know that you're not picking Middleton. I think that's a fine pick. I don't know if it's going to work out. I'm going to go through some picks here in the draft, and I'm curious. Like, I know you answered this on air. I believe you answered this on air, but what about this LaMelo Ball situation? I mean, a couple weeks ago, it felt like he was persona non grata. Nobody was going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. Nobody had seen him play in a long time. Now people seen him play just a couple days ago. He looked kind of like normal. Like, what's the story with this guy? He's been a brutal first round pick for 2 seasons now. What do you do with that?
I think early on mocks, like the very first mocks I was doing, probably in like July and August, he was slipping to like round 3. And maybe this is, I guess as an analyst, I should be as upfront with information as possible. But like, I was like, is there a reason for me to just start hyping up LaMelo now? Like, I want to get him in round 3. So if I was asked about it, I'm like, yeah, like, I think that's a great pick, great value pick with LaMelo, high upside, but the injury risk, sure, that's there. But I mean, he's a first round talent that you're getting late 2nd round, early 3rd round. Is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to wear ankle braces? So there's no reason for me to, like, if he's going in round 3, great value. If he's going in round 2, great value. He went pick 22, great value. I mean, I think the only thing bad you could probably do is take him late 1st round, because then you're kind of eliminating any upside. Like, I don't think he's going to be significantly better than 11 or 12, but getting him at the end of the round 2, if he's healthy, that's a home run.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the crazy thing is he does, like, back in the day when he played 35.7 minutes per game, I believe was the number, that projected to be like,
Unreal.
Like number 5, number 6 overall. That's why he was getting drafted at 8, 9, and 10 in those seasons. And the weird season happened. It's like, well, I mean, if he's upright, he's bound to be a first round value again. Then boom, disaster. And then now this little cushion here. I'm just curious what's going to happen with his ADP, if he's just going to keep rising up the ranks as he continues to get on TV. And the question about whether he plays with ankle braces or not seems to be the defining factor of this discussion, which is funny because it's like, man, don't you want to play ball? Like,
it is funny because I took Anthony Davis with the 5th pick. I'm like, well, that's a make or break pick. He's either going to be really good or he's going to miss a bunch of games and ruin my team. And then I look at LaMelo Ball and I kind of laugh, but he's the exact same thing. He's got that first round talent. And if he plays in 70 games, the only person that's going to be laughing is Dan Titus because he's got him on his team.
There were a lot of really interesting. I mean, I know there's 12 teams. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. I just felt like everybody's got great talent on their team. I wasn't looking at anybody's teams and thinking, oh, what are you doing there? I mean, maybe mine and Rick's. We were blending methodologies here. He made me take Julius Randle.
I really think the Tobias Harris pick was weird. And I think the most interesting side note to that draft is that Mikal Bridges and Miles Bridges were drafted directly right next to each other.
And they were drafted that way in the real NBA, right? Was that
Oh, I don't
the
know.
case? I don't know.
think so.
I think they were like 8 and 9, if I recall correctly.
Wow.
Ryan
10,
Canals
10,
took
11,
Mark
something like that.
Williams in round 6. I thought that was, I would love to get his take on that, because that one was has so much downward pressure on his ADP because of everybody being freaked out about the foot. And it was the back last year, and it's Charlotte. And you never know what's going on in Charlotte because it's a small market. Shout out journalism and media. Not their fault, just the mechanics of it all. What do you think about Mark Williams, Noah? Are you going there? Mark Williams.
First, with McHale and Miles Bridges, they were 10 and 12. I just quickly looked. Very close with an SGA sandwich there.
Oh my God.
Which I'm sure everybody looking back is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we took player over SGA. But
I was going to say something, but it's hilarious to me, but it would not have come off the right way. I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
I'll just say the Bridges were the bread in that sandwich.
Mark Williams, who you said that Ryan took with the 4th pick of round 6. I like Mark Williams as a player. I think that the injury concerns are valid considering what happened last year and what's already happening this year. So I hope he stays healthy enough for that to be a good pick. I think I'd feel more comfortable maybe a round later. But I know I was saying this during the mock is that I don't love rounds 6 through 8. And what ends up happening is when I'm not disciplined and get bigs early, because I just enjoy like every guard, and then a lot of the bigs I'm like, So I have to get my bigs early, because if I try and get my bigs during round 6 through 8, I always get mad because I don't really love any of them. So I think Mark Williams is fine there, but I think it's just, is he healthy or not? That's the main question.
I want to unpack that for a second, because I feel like this is a thing that I see in all drafts. I feel like guards go early, bigs they fall. What's going on with that for you? Like you see the guard and it's like a shiny sports car and you're like, I gotta have it. And then you look at like Jared Allen and you're like, oh, what do? You just go get high field goal percentage and blocks and boards, and that's just not gonna work for me. But I do think that's a thing. Like these stat lines are not sexy. There's a fall off with the bigs. So do you find yourself, if there's money on the line or if there's like a lot of pride on the line, or do you go into that draft like a rubber band bracelet around your wrist and you're like snapping it, like get a big, get a big, get a big, get a big? What's the thought process there?
I have it like the movie Draft Day, where I write down like draft a big in the first 4 rounds, no matter what kind of thing, just to, like, remind myself to do it. But I think honestly, and this has happened with a lot of mocks as well, is if I'm in this later spot, it's like I didn't go Trae Young this time because Giannis was still there, which was surprising. But getting like Trae Young and another guard, whether it's Harden, Mitchell, Booker, and then by the time round 3 rolls around, I'm like, Tyrese Maxey's still here. This is cool. Oh, DeJounte Murray's here in round 4. This is cool. And then it gets to be round 5 or 6, and I have like all guards or maybe like one wing. And I'm like, this is not a viable strategy. And then all these bigs just kind of, they don't fit great. So if I get at least one big in the first 3 rounds, I feel a little bit more comfortable drafting the guards that I like in round 6 through 8. Because again, every single guard, I'm pretty much like, I like this. I want to draft this guy right now.
Well, Noah, you took Beal in the 6th, Brad Beal.
Mm-hmm.
You took Jordan Poole in the 7th. You and I have a little bit of a history with Jordan Poole. After 1 year ago today in my family room, I'm not touching Beal anywhere. I love Jordan Poole as like a 7th or 8th round, like almost sleeper guy now. Where were you with the Brad Beal and the Poole pick?
So I'll tell you, a lot of it is looking up and like looking back at what Bradley Beal did second half of last year. So just like a quick look, final 2 months of last year, he was top 30 in 9 cat leagues, top 30 over the final month, top 10 over the final 2 weeks, much smaller sample size. And I'm not saying he's going to be that good, but I think when he finally got healthy, he was just playing better. And I think adding in Coach Bud into that and like increasing the amount of 3-pointers they were taking. I saw there was numbers from their first preseason game where I think it was like 40% of their attempts were from beyond the arc, and they made over 40% of their threes. Like, they're going to shoot a lot more threes, and I think that's a good thing to get these 30-point per game scorers that like to shoot mid-range shots to go out there and shoot threes. It's good for the team, and I think it'll be good for Beal in fantasy. And then Jordan Poole, also really good down the stretch last year when he was playing point guard when Tyus Jones was hurt. And my fear with Jordan Poole was that they brought in Malcolm Brogdon and he's going to start point guard, but now he's going to miss at least a month. And Jordan Poole is going to be the starting point guard. No Bub Carrington yet. It's Poole's show to run. So I'm pretty excited about both of them. What's going to end up happening is they're going to end up biting me and they're going to end up being bad. But the numbers, my logic right now, it makes sense to me that these guys are going to be good. So I just have to trust that.
Well, the good news with Poole is they came out and just immediately said, we're putting him on the ball. It took that kind of out of the equation. Because, I mean, I was like, why are you guys not giving him the ball? I mean, that's his only purpose on a basketball floor is to grab the ball and go do something silly with it. But, I mean, all kidding aside, in Golden State, he was a 3-level scorer with all sorts of promise. I mean, he was shooting techs over Steph Curry because he was by percentage a better foul shooter. I mean, we're talking about an elite foul shooter that should trip and fall in an 8-cat league and be a top 50 guy. You're getting him here at 74 in this draft. I know there's a lot of people, analysts, players that picked Poole and would love a bounce back. That's the only thing keeping this from being super lucrative. Like right now, 74, I think that's an easy win for Jordan Poole. Maybe it should be like 84 if everybody hadn't gone so big last season.
Exactly.
And then you'd be really, really looking at some nice profit there. Looking at some of the bigs that were drafted in this mock draft we just did the other day on YouTube. If I'm looking at like round 5 through 7, it's Vucevic, Nurkic. Let's see here. Mark Williams. Who knows what happened with that? Hartenstein, Brooke Lopez, Nick Claxton, Zubac. I'm not even going to try his first name, Doc, because I can't let you win. Avica. Rudy Gobert. Maybe Jabari Smith, depending on how you want to kind of classify him. DeAndre Ayton. Jalen Duren. Anybody excited about spending a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick about any of these guys?
I'm not. And I think that was kind of my point with why I have to get myself a big early. And then some of the bigs a little bit later in the draft, I do kind of like. And so I think that's why I just want to avoid taking them in rounds 6 through 8. But if I don't get one early, then I can't have my starting center or my best center be a guy I took in like round 10 or 11. So.
Yeah, there's something about the way that the game has changed as well that's kind of put bigs in a couple of different camps. Maybe it's one's like offensive 3-point shooting, loses a bit of their field goal percentage and low defensive numbers. And then you get these guys that are just all field goal percentage, blocks, boards, and they can kind of fly up the ranks real quick, but they're not generally as skilled and they kind of live on the razor's edge. They're quick and bouncy and spry for a year or two. And then they fall off, and you kind of got to figure out where that razor's edge is with them. And that makes it a really interesting thing. And how do you handle like the blocks? Let me ask you a strategy question. Blocks, it's Wemby this year. He's just going to block the crap out of the ball. And then, what's going to happen in the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 10th, 15th place in a blocks ranks list? Like scarcity, draft strategy, when you go into a 9-cat head-to-head draft, as we were just in, like, what's the mindset? Are you trying to, like, I know you said that you don't want to forget to draft a big, but do you have any other strategy nuggets for folks, maybe even like beginners and intermediate players who are just kind of looking for something to hang on to before they head into their draft?
Yeah, I think for this year specifically, or maybe for the next like 15 years, now that Wemby's in place, I'm never going to lean, unless I have Wemby, lean into like trying to win blocks every week. Like, I think it's important because if everybody's like, I either have Wemby or I punt blocks, then there's gonna be 11 teams trying to punt blocks, and somebody's gonna win. So you might as well get like a little bit of blocks, like kind of understand, hey, I'm probably not gonna beat the Wemby team unless I really lean into this, but I'll get a couple guys that can maybe get me a handful of blocks. So I think that's gonna be a kind of an interesting category to manage, because blocks are already kind of hard to predict. Like we have a handful of really, really good shot blockers, and then some other guys that, yeah, they get one every once in a while, or they get one per game. So I think that's kind of the main Wemby related strategy, but I think I may have said this during the mock, but it's very difficult, I think, to win and like have a lot of success in a 9 category league without punting 1 or 2 categories. I think that was some of my issue early on when I was first starting to play 9-cat leagues, was I was, not considering my team build quite as much. And I ended up having a team I thought was pretty good, but then I was only good in like 3 or 4 categories. So it's like, you don't win by winning 4 categories a week. You win by winning 5 or more. So trying to, the team building aspect of category leagues is just so fascinating to me. And it makes fantasy basketball, like the strategy behind it, infinitely more exciting than fantasy football. Or maybe not exciting.
No,
maybe not exciting, because fantasy football is incredibly exciting, but it's also like, my guy score a touchdown, I get 6 points. Like fantasy basketball, it's matchup dependent. Like you can really get into it and fully nerd out over it.
Yes. I mean, football, it's like, I just won. It's like literally just happened in front of me. I mentioned in something that maybe I did this in the mock. I don't even know. I had Larry Fitzgerald as a guy about 15 years ago when I was in a high stakes league, and he ran an 80-yard touchdown in the playoffs to score, and I won 30 grand on it. I'll never, ever, I swear to you, I'll never, ever forget that moment. It was like ingrained in my brain. It was, it was great. Shout out Greg Rosenthal.
So I got into the 8th round of that draft yesterday, and I did not have a point guard on my roster. And I was like, okay, I'm either not going to have any assists, or I'm going to try to piece this together. I drafted Scoot Henderson in 8, Keontae in 9, and Tyus Jones in 10.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have done that, or would you have punted?
I probably would have been leaning into a punt at that point, but I don't think that those are necessarily bad picks. And to try and recuperate some assists, like, you did a good job. So, like, I mean, Tyus Jones was in my queue. If he made it back around to me, I was probably going to take him. There's a lot of guys I had in my queue in kind of those later rounds, specifically Dyson Daniels. Like, dang, like Keston took that. Like, Dyson Daniels has been my late round pick in every draft I'm in, so I love that one. But no, I thought it was a good way to recoup assists, because I don't know the exact numbers just by looking at the draft board, but seems like your assists are also like going to be fairly decent with Anthony Edwards, Jalen Johnson, Derek White, Franz Wagner. So like, they weren't horrible considering you didn't have a point guard, and then adding in 3 guys that I don't remember exactly what Keontae George had, but I know Scoot can get over 7 or 8, and Tyus Jones should be able to get close to that if he's starting and passing to 3 elite scorers.
Well, let's look at rounds like 8 through 10 of this mock draft we did on Yahoo the other day. And so, Doc, you made the point at some point in time, I can't remember, the days are all blended together, but you said you could get assists late in draft. Now, contrasting, I asked the question, did you like the bigs in the rounds 5 through 7? Now let's go assists in rounds 8 through 10. Pajemski, Marcus Smart, Tyler Hero, Jalen Suggs. We'll skip Caruso, but Keontae George, your entire 8 through 10, Doc, Scoot, Keontae, Tyus Jones, Chris Paul, Bogdan Bogdanovic, CJ McCollum went in round 8. Let's see here. We had Austin Reeves. We had Melton. You got Melton. And then Amin Thompson, a little bit of assists. And that's probably end of list. Would any, like when you ask, hey, would you draft these guys in 8 through 10? I mean, a lot of favorable, at least on my side, I'm like, yeah, I'd draft those guys 8 through 10. So I kind of wonder if we're reaching a point with the point guard play around the league where there's so many of them, so many off guards that also get assists that are productive at the talent level has sort of created this ability to get assists late in drafts, and that might, tip a hand towards some draft strategy where you maybe spend a little bit more effort getting those bigs.
The problem is we just don't know how many assists Scoot and Keontae and Tyus Jones and Terry Rozier and Dustin Daniels and D'Anthony Melton. We just don't know how many dimes they're going to get. But Scoot was awesome at the end of last season. Tyus Jones has got so many big mouths to feed. Like, he should be good. And Keontae George, his assist numbers were kind of crap last year, but he's nothing but upside. And then Chris Paul is throwing lobs to Wemby. And Marcus Smart is sort of like on the ball when John Moran is off the ball. Like, I don't think you need to go all in on good point guards early this year.
That's what it seems to be looking like. And at the same time, the guys that are the big men that are going early, of course, there's Anthony Davis. He's his own ball of wax. Embiid's his own ball of wax. Sabonis is this safe option, but it doesn't give you blocks. And, it's free throws an issue, but that's not that big of a deal. But really, it just doesn't get you blocks. The other bigs, Karl Anthony Towns is another character right now in this fantasy saga here, where prior to the trade, obviously, whatever you wanted to say about him is probably accurate. You're not that excited, but what if? Now he's kind of the guy, right? Like, he's a viable big man in the second round that you can take. Chet Holmgren's another viable big man that you could take in the second round. And then again, it gets really desolate. Jaren Jackson, question marks surrounding him. And that's your third round right there. It's a unique fantasy season, I think. I think this, of course, Wemby's the man, Jokic is the man. And if you're drafting outside of the top 4, you got your work cut out for you any way you slice it. It's a lot. Anything regarding strategy that we're just talking about that comes to mind for you, Noah, as we kind of wrap this show up?
I think the assist thing is pretty interesting as well, because we're talking about getting guards late that can get some assists. I think early on, most of the bigs going in the first 2 rounds can get you 5 assists per game, like just at least, if not more. Like Wemby, Jokic is probably going to get closer to 8 or 9. Anthony Davis can get closer to 5. I don't remember his exact numbers off the top of my head, but maybe it's like 3 or 4. But Embiid can get close to 5. Chet, maybe my argument's breaking down a little bit, but Scotty Barnes and Sabonis, Giannis can get close to 5. So there's a number of bigs early on. I went Şengün in round 3. We know he can pass the ball. So a lot of those assists you can still get early on without necessarily drafting a point guard. So you're not super weak in assists, but I think having a guy like or a duo like what Mark got with Trae Young and James Harden back to back, those are 2 of the top 3 in assists per game this year, like them and Halliburton. So there's an advantage you can get, but I don't think you're completely like cooked on assists if you don't get a really good point guard within the first couple of rounds.
Yeah, this the draft strategy stuff, and it's so in the weeds. It's really hard to visualize. If you guys, maybe we'll find a way to get the draft board published somehow. You can definitely see it in the actual mock on YouTube. So maybe just freeze frame that thing and just look at it. It's pretty wild. It's pretty crazy. You get in the weeds real quick with this stuff, and every year is different. You got to kind of find those pockets of value and draft a lot to really kind of determine, okay, I can get this here, I can get there. Okay, what's my preferred strategy? And you kind of just wiggle through it at that point. So fascinating stuff, man. Noah, it's been great. We want to do this again. If you're down to come back on the show, we'd love to have you back. It's great to see the work you're doing at RotoWorld. And I always love seeing people just kind of trailblaze in the early parts of their career. And best of luck to you as you go out. You can find him online at Noah Rubin, RUBIN 22, and at rotoworld.com. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys, all of you out there in listener land, for all of your support, all your kind words over the last couple of weeks as we've been putting product out. Thank you, Andre, for producing a great show as usual. Thank you, Doc, who's bowed out because he's going to go get something to make his voice feel better. Glad to have you back on the show and kicking, Doc. And thank you to everybody who joined our Industry Mock Draft the other day. That was great. Go check out the lineup and their Twitter handles at Ethos Fantasy NBA when you get a chance. The best in the industry joining us for a great mock. I was really happy with the results. And that's going to do it for today's show. This has been Fantasy NBA Today, presented by Bet Online, a Sports Ethos presentation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be well.